This is the first assignment that we're doing. We're going to do a stepped value scale and then a gradient that goes from dark to light. We're going to be using these shapes on top to trace. So you place it under a blank sheet of paper, and then you'll be able to see through pretty clearly. The way I do it is I just make sure it's straight on the top, and I place dots. And once you have the dots, you'll use your rulers to connect the dots. Okay, so one of the ways I teach drawing is we want to start gradually building from light to dark. This is going to be the dark side, this is going to be the light side. The last box is done, we're not going to touch that one at all. One of the ways that I teach students to learn how to get a kind of a light touch. So when you're making it darker, you're not going to press harder. You're just going to add layers of graphite on top of other layers. To stop students from pressing hard, I make them extend the graphite out about 1/2 inch, so you can see it sticking out pretty far there. I'm going to turn the paper a little bit to the side so you can see the handling. Now, when you're writing, if I was writing, I would be holding the pencil close to the tip. When I draw, I change positions. I'm holding it like this, and then I switch. So instead of down, I'm holding it up, and then I can use my hand. If I was doing a larger drawing, I would be able to use my arm, my shoulder, to get a much larger stroke. So the way I'm going to do is I'm going to gradually add layers down the entire thing. Here's the rules. As you're doing it, you're going to intentionally cross over the edge. So I'm going to start drawing here, and I'm going to cross over to the edge. If you try to color inside the box, you're going to leave white areas at the top and bottom, obviously if you want to make this thing darker, you don't want to leave white areas inside. So what we're going to do is we're going to intentionally cross the line. We're also only going to use vertical up and down marks. So watch what I'm doing is I'm just gradually going. I'm not getting dark quickly, I'm going pretty slow. There's a gap between the spaces which I'll go back and fill later. and I'm crossing over about a ½ an inch on the top and bottom on purpose. What we'll do later is we'll go in with our eraser and we'll go back and clean up our mess. So again, I'm crossing my lines, I'm only using vertical strokes, and I'm just laying down values of graphite. I'm doing the whole thing, so I'm going all the way from the darkest to the lightest. It's all the same right now. I'm going to go back and I'm going to fill in the lines. And this box is basically done. I'm going to go back there and clean up the edges a little bit later. There's a couple white streaks in here that I'll go in and I'll touch those up a little bit. Just gradually filling them in. Okay, so this one's done. I'm going to go back and I'm going to go do the entire bar except for this box because I don't want this one to get any darker. So I start down at the end. And I lay a value. Again, I'm only using vertical lines. I'm going left to right from darkest to lightest. And I'm gradually building the values. With the point extended this far, if I press harder to make it dark, it will just snap the point. So that's one of the things that I found, that if I want to gradually build subtle differences in value, it's a pretty straightforward way to do it. So one of the things you'll hear me say quite a bit is instead of calling it shading, we call it adding value, or eventually you hear me calling it rendering. What I'm doing is to indicate form. I'm going to show you guys how to go from dark to light to indicate three-dimensional form. You can see this one's starting to be a little bit darker than that. I'm going to do another pass to make it just a tiny bit darker. So again, I'm not just focusing on that one box here that I want to go darker. I'm going to do all of them to make it a tiny bit darker. And we're done. Now this one you can see is just a subtle difference in value. This is a little bit darker than this one's a little bit darker than that one. Now what I want to do is I want to go in and clean up my mess, and I'm going to do this in a couple times throughout this exercise. So I'm going to take my erasing shield, which in this case is just a index card. Now you want to be careful with this. You don't want to ever smudge your drawing. So what I do is I place it down, then with my other hand I hold it nice and secure, and I go back there and I clean up my mess. Now you'll see I get the graphite on the paper there. So what I typically do is, if I'm wearing jeans, I'll take this and I'll rub it off on my jeans a little bit, just to kind of get most of the graphite off of the eraser, because if you press graphite into the fibers of the paper, you'll never get it up. Get it out of there and it will just look smudgy. For this course, I'm not too concerned about making pretty drawings. I just want to teach you guys the underlying concept and the foundation skills needed to get nice drawings. So you can see I have a nice clean edge there, and then I'll do the same thing on the other side. Normally I'd flip the whole sketchbook over, but that's up to you. So for this exercise is pretty quick. I'm going to be adding one or two supplemental exercises where you build values with dots, which is called stippling, and then also with a ballpoint pen. But you do that if you have time. So this box is done, this box is done. Now I'm going to go back and do it again. This time I'm going to stop at the fourth box. And again, you never want to press hard in this exercise. If you start pressing hard with the pencil, the graphite will flatten out the fibers of the paper, and it will make it very shiny, which is not what you want to accomplish with this. Now that's a little bit darker than the fourth box is a little bit darker. I'm just going to do another very light pass. And you'll notice that the more you'll do it, the lines within the boxes disappear. So it will just end up looking like a textured surface. And again, you'll see teeny little dots in the paper, which is the grain of the paper, which is also called tooth. Now I'm going to make an intentional mistake on here. Let's say by accident you went a little too dark and you put a little smudge like that within your drawing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the kneaded eraser, and then for this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shape it. If you hold this in your hand, the heat from your hand will make it keep it more pliable. So I didn't do that obviously, but just hold it. You can adjust it for a little bit and knead it, and eventually it'll get nice and soft. So what I'm doing is I'm making a little wedge shape, and you can kind of see that on the camera. I've just pinched that into a wedge, and then I can take that wedge and I can lightly lift out this little dark area. And I'm just going to touch it gently and just lift out small amounts of the graphite. Now I'm not rubbing it, I'm just kind of tapping it, and I've just transferred the graphite from the page to the kneaded eraser, and now it looks pretty good. Another thing that might happen is you might get a little white area that you want to go in there. I call that noodling, and some other teachers call it that too. And then what I'll go is I'll just go and I'll fill in just little areas that I want to go in there and just make little adjustments. So this box, this box, this box, and this box are done. I'm not going to clean up the mess just for time reasons. So we're getting done, almost done with this exercise. So I'm going back again. So this is where you're going to have to go back a couple times. So this box is done. I'm going to make this one probably 2 more passes on it just to get it much darker. Now once we have this much graphite on the paper, I'm going to suggest that you go in there and clean up your mess after this pass. And again, I'm not pressing harder. I can still see the little dots of the grain of the paper. It's not getting shiny, it's not getting all silvery. I'm crossing over the edges so I don't get those white areas. If I do skip a little area like here, I can go in there and just noodle out any of the whites that I want to get rid of. But again, this is drawing, this is not writing. And you'll see how I'm holding the pencil. It's much different than when I wrote my name. When I write my name, I tighten up on the pencil and I turn it into a writing exercise. But when I'm drawing, I switch. So now this one is definitely darker than that. I'm going to go in with my erasing shield again, and I'm going to clean it up. I'm not too uptight about making these things too neat, but I just want to show you the technique. So you'll see that the graphite is staining the paper a little bit. If you want to avoid that, just clean up the edges. Also clean your eraser so you don't get that smudging on there. But for this exercise, I'm not really too concerned about this. This isn't about making pretty drawings. This is just learning how to build values. And I'm going to flip it around and then do the bottom edge. I hold the erasing shield on there, and I'm being careful not to slide the index card around too much, because if I do that, it will smudge the graphite, and it will make it difficult to work with, and it can make a lot of work afterwards. Okay, so we're done up to this point. Now I just have to do the last 2 boxes. I typically, when I teach the online course, I suggest that you spend a couple hours a week drawing. If you have more time, obviously do it. It's like going to the gym. If you go to the gym often, it will have benefits. If you go once a month, you're basically wasting your time. So the way to learn how to draw is just to draw often, and push yourself to learn new things, experiment and try. So I'm kind of happy with that difference. Now, for this box, you're going to be tempted to just go really hard to fill it in. Don't do that. I'm going to say put 2 light layers on it. And then this is the trick for the last box. That's 1, and then I'm going to go back again. And I'm not pressing harder. I'm just putting more graphite on the paper. Now I'm going to go back and clean up the edge. Now listen, look how dirty that is. That I'm definitely going to want to clean. So I rubbed off all the graphite that was on the surface there. So it's kind of clean. And then I'm going to go back there and now clean up that edge. And so like this smudge, you can go back and clean up the surface of the paper. You're not going to be putting this exercise in any galleries probably, so you don't have to worry about getting it too clean. If you are really concerned about getting a neat drawing, just clean up the edges more often. That's all there is to it, and then you won't have the discoloration, but for this exercise it doesn't really matter to me. Now, here's the trick for this. When you want to get the last box the darkest, this is when you go in there and you start filling in any of the little white areas that might be left. And I'm not pressing harder, I'm just identifying any little white area that needs to be filled in and making it just a teeny bit darker. This will never get black as night. You have to have it so it's a little bit darker than that one. This is a stepped value scale that gradually goes from darkest to lightest. We're going to be doing a couple exercises where we're rendering geometric objects, and eventually we're going to be doing portraits and other drawings where you want to indicate three-dimensional form, and the way we're going to do that is transitions from light to dark to give the illusion of 3 dimensions. So again, all I'm doing is I'm just going in there and I'm just finding any little white spot that makes this, and you can see this is a little bit darker than that. If I wanted to, I could do very light value on top of it, but I haven't pressed hard. I haven't broke my pencil point at all during this exercise. Many of you will break it many times. Don't feel bad about it. And just to, I mean, look how big my hands are. I mean, I've got pretty big mitts. And it took me a long time to learn how to finesse the point where I'm not snapping my pencils every couple seconds. I think I'm probably floating around 250 pounds at this point in my life. So if I can do it with these giant monsters, you can do it with, most likely with whatever you're working with. It's just a matter of practice. So let's just say by accident you have like a little dark area, like here's a little streak I want to get rid of. I can go back in with the kneaded eraser. I'm just going to pinch it into a very thin wedge. See how thin that is? Let me see if I can get that on camera. So it's skinny, it's wide, but then I can go in and I just kind of go and just kiss that out of there. And I can get rid of, make little things. And let's say I make it, and accidentally took too much off, and I make a light area that I want to adjust. So right now I have a little light area here. I'll make it even lighter. Let's say you made a mistake in the other direction. Now I can go back in there and just very lightly go in there and add small amounts of graphite to make an adjustment to just kind of unify that again. So you can go back and forth, you know, like here there's like a little dark area that I might want to pull out. There's a little dark area right there. Maybe I want to adjust a little dark there. Maybe I add a little bit of something. And for this, we're done. Now for the bottom one, I want to refer back to the illustration we have here. This one we're going to be going from dark to light. And the way we do this is we look at the top for reference. We never want anything down here darker than what's up here. So we don't want any of this dark all the way down here. And we want to gradually transition from dark to light. So I always keep this on here, and I think as you're doing it, if you're kind of in your head saying, oh, I want to go more graphite on this side, left graphite on this side, you'll get this. Just so you know, we're 39 minutes into this video. Typically this exercise takes, I don't know, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how you go. I would say just go slow. You're not in any rush to do this. I've been teaching this course for a bunch of years now, and some of the students, they'll spend 5-10 minutes on it, and you can tell because they just basically are scribbling in the values, or they're just trying to press really hard and just BS their way through it. Don't do it. It's I've been doing this for a long time. I can tell this is a slow process. You're not going to get it done in 20 minutes. So again, I'm going back. I'm adding some more value. I have more graphite here, and as I go more, and then I go down, and I go less and less and less and less. And again, try to keep your lines as vertical as possible. If you start going at a diagonal, it's really difficult to adjust the values on a diagonal line. So just if you keep it vertical, I think you'll do okay. Some of the other supplemental exercises we'll be doing for this is I'm going to show you how to do just kind of abstract shapes and patterns. If any of you guys are into 2D design, it's a useful thing where you generate patterns using different shapes and lines, and it's often kind of fun too. So I'll be adding those as well, so just keep an eye out for supplemental exercises. So I'm going to go back there and clean up my edge. You'll see that the index card, your erasing shield, can get kind of dirty sometimes. So you pressing on that is going to press that graphite into the paper. So you can clean up your index card as well, or throw it in the garbage and get a fresh one. They're cheap, but it doesn't take much just to kind of clean these things up. So again, I'm going to use my erasing shield, and I'm going to go in and clean up my mess. Again, I want to stress that when you're doing these exercises, I'm not really too concerned about if it's neat or pretty. I just want you to learn the techniques and understand the concepts, the underlying concepts of why we're doing this stuff. This is teaching you how to use the materials and also understanding value. Value is the transition from light to dark. And one of the ways you can get this off is you can just brush it off with the index card. Sometimes you'll have the urge to blow the dirt off of your drawing. Fight that urge. And the reason for that is if you accidentally blow, you sometimes will spit on your drawing. And if you get spit on your drawing, it's going to really mess it up. So don't spit on your drawings. Also, don't eat potato chips when you're drawing, because that grease definitely will get into the paper really quickly, and that will never get off too. And I've learned that the hard way, and I love potato chips. Normally when I'm drawing, I would be listening to music. It just seems to make it more fun for me. I don't know. I don't want to make you guys suffer through the crappy music that I like. Now you'll see that I've made some little mistakes here. That's a little too dark. I'm not too concerned about it at this point, because this is the area that I'm really trying to kind of finish. So I'm looking down here, I'm looking up there. I'll throw 1 or 2 lines down here, so just this area here is the pure white of the paper. But then I'm going to say from down here, it looks about done. Then I'm going to go back all the way down to the beginning. I don't want to get it too dark down here and then leave this all light, because it'll just be hard to judge it. So I just push myself to go all the way down to the end. And the whole time I'm thinking is my goal, the end result is to transition from dark to light. I think I said before that we were 40 minutes into the video. I was wrong with that. I had 40 minutes of battery on the camera. We've been doing this for 25 minutes. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to clean up my mess. And again, look how dirty that eraser is. I'm going to clean that off on my pant leg. Now it's nice and clean. Now I'm going to go back there and clean up the edges. So I spent a lot of time learning how to use the equipment, and I learned how to use the video equipment using YouTube. And one of the things they said is don't put your camera on the same table that you're drawing on, is because when you erase, it will shake it up. One of the things you will do, which I just did here, is I went a little bit into my drawing. It happens all the time. Since it's here, it's not a big deal, but I can always go back there and just kind of noodle that out, just lightly. But since it's down here, as I build those values, it will disappear. I make mistakes all the time. That's one of them, but you'll see that mistake will disappear after a while. What I'll be doing for these videos too is I will do a full speed version with this narration, and then another one I'll do is I'll speed it up to probably like 10 times speed, so you can see really quick what the process looks like in high speed. And I recommend watching both. Another thing, I've noticed that with these online classes, I tend to get better results than face-to-face classes, because I can only do so many demos. And I think one of the amazing things about online instruction is you can pause this video and just go back and watch it over and over and over again. And I think that's why, as I've seen in the last I guess 20 years or so, the quality of drawing and painting and skill that's being displayed on the internet has increased amazingly. It's phenomenal, the amount of information out there. If you want to learn how to do anything now, you can do it on the internet. So this little streak here bugs me, so I'm going to go in there. I'm going to create a very thin wedge. Let me show you that. So I created a very thin wedge, and then I'm just going to go in there and just make a subtle adjustment. I'm going to do the same thing right there. And you really can finesse this. So going back to what you can learn on the internet, I'm a little bit old school. I studied at the Art Students League for 8 years under this guy named Peter Cox, who's an amazing draftsman, an amazing painter. Old school. He spent hundreds, if not probably, thousands of hours learning his craft. And he did it the traditional way. He studied with other artists and he learned that way, and then he spent countless hours in the studio just doing it. And that was the way you learn, and that's still the way you learn. But now with the internet and the amount of bandwidth that you have available to you, where you can watch these videos. That would have been someone from the 1930s would never have thought this was possible, that you could learn this way. Back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, even earlier, they used to have these mail order courses where they would give you written instructions with illustrations what to do. You would do your assignments, and then you would put it into an envelope, and you would mail it to somebody, and they would correct your drawings, and they would give you suggestions on how to get better. So you'd have to wait weeks or months to get feedback on what you're doing. Now with the internet, you can scan this stuff in and you post it on a user group, and then sometimes within minutes you can get real useful feedback from your peers or from teachers, and it just really helps you push the bar a little bit higher so much quicker. I know there's a lot of criticism of people wasting their time on the internet, and yeah, of course people do that, and I do that myself, but the other side of it, the internet does have the ability to teach you things if you can control the urge to look at eBay crap and social media or whatever you're distracted by. I spent a lot of time looking at gardening videos and electronic, how to build things with, electronics. I'm really fascinated by solar electricity, and I learned how to do a lot of that stuff watching videos. I was able to build a solar panel and with a collection, so I have a big giant 12-volt battery. So if my power goes out, I have backup that I built myself, and I did all that. I learned how to do that watching videos. Really helpful stuff out there if you spend your time looking for it. Or you can watch videos of dogs playing the piano, I guess, too. But anyway, I think I'm kind of happy with the way this looks. One of the ways you can tell if it jumps is I squint my eyes. Squint so you make your eyes go blurry. And when I do that, I see a little bit of, it jumps from this dark to this light a little abruptly for me. So if I want, I'm just going to add a couple lines right next to it so it doesn't look so abrupt. And then I have a little gap here, here, and here. And the way I identify that is I squint my eyes so it looks a little bit blurry, and then I can go make tiny adjustments. And I could do this for 10 hours to make this just a perfect transition from light to dark. I want to get it really dark in this little area, the last, let's say, half to quarter inch. So here I'm going in, and I'm with the point of my pencil, I'm going in and filling in very lightly. I'm not pressing hard the dots. So we've been working on this for 32 minutes. I'm going to say that's it for this exercise. Some of the exercises will take longer, some will take less. I'm going to have you guys do some self-portraits. Also, I'll be giving you guys some drawings to copy by other artists it's called master copies, where you find images that can teach you how to draw better, and I'll give you some different options on that. I think I'm going to have you guys draw from photographs a little bit, so I'll be providing that reference for you. I might just take some pictures of my yard and let you work with those, because I've got a lot of stuff up in this area that I think would be fun to draw and helpful too. So I cleaned up the mess. So I have a little mistake here as I went a little bit inside with the erasing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to very lightly go in there and touch that up. And again, I'm not pressing hard. I'm just gently noodling in some value, filling in that white. I'm seeing a little white area here that I'm just kind of filling in, a little bit there, a little bit there, and that's done. Okay, so I don't want to get too uptight with this exercise. I'm okay with the way this looks. So that's it. That's your first assignment. My recommendation is go back over this a couple times. Stop the video. Now, I'm sure you all noticed that there's a big blank area down here. This is where you're going to put in, if you want to use a supplemental use one of the supplemental exercises, you can go back and do this. And so you can do one with the dot there's a dot technique, there's there's a ballpoint pen technique, and then also the using different shapes to create values. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the end of the assignment.